But that's the beautiful thing about a Laurel and Hardy film. It's the randomness of what happens in these films is just beautiful, and the last thing normally that you expect to happen will happen. That is indeed the crazy world of Laurel and Hardy. So hey guys, before we start this video, I just want to apologise in advance if you hear any knocking outside. There's a house being built close to where I live at, so we may hear some noise during the video. So yes, Laurel and Hardy, Should Married Men Go Home from 1928. This is a silent short, and it's one of the typical the single man trying to get the married man out to hang out sort of short film. And Stan Laurel wants to go for golf, but Oliver doesn't want to have anything to do with him this year. He's set up for a nice quiet romantic afternoon with the wife, and they see him walking up the street with the golf bag, and of course they try to hide in the house, pretend that they're not home, but fail miserably. Stanley manages to get into the house, and there's the whole awkward silence thing where they're just sort of sitting there. Ollie doesn't know what to do because, you know, he kind of wants to go golfing at the same time, but at the same time he wants to spend time with the wife, and it's just that awkward situation where, you know, they don't know what to say to each other. So Stanley ends up wrecking the house at some point in this here. He wants to put on a record to listen to something. He ends up destroying the curtains in the sitting room. Ollie says, right, give me this here, I'll put the record on. You maybe break the record player as well. Oliver accidentally destroys the record player trying to turn it on. Anyway, the wife kicks the two of them out. Stanley's like, deadly, let's go. And he does this little jump over the little white fence that's around their house, and doesn't bother opening the gate or nothing, just jumps over it, and he's like, come on, and of course Ollie ben Ollie, he tries to do the same thing, ends up destroying the fence as well. Typical slapstick humour at its best. This is one of the films that I haven't seen of them before, so this was a brand new experience for me as well. They get to the golf course anyway to shoot a few holes, but there's a sign up saying that there's only parties of 4 allowed on today. So they're beat, what are we going to do? But there's 2 women turn up at the same time in the same situation. There's only 2 of them. They need 2 more people to make up a party, so they come up with the idea, well, why don't we just team up and have a game together? And they end up going for a drink at the start, but in saying that, Ollie is only allowed a certain amount of allowance money from the wife. Completely hand-packed. So as the wife can't do anything without the wife's permission. That's a running thing for Oliver and all the Laurel and Hardy films where he's married. He's completely hand-packed by the wife, and you know, if she doesn't let him to do something, that normally doesn't happen. So they're stuck. They want to try and not impress the girls, but they don't want to look like complete wasters at the same time. It's like, we don't have this amount of money, we can't afford to get a whole load of stuff for them. And Stanley ends up screwing up that as well, so they ends up, you know, owing more money than what they actually have. So just to get his own back, Oliver leaves Stanley to settle the bill, and him and the girls go out to the course, and I think Stanley has to leave his watch and payment for the drinks and food, whatever they got. So we get to the course anyway, and havoc begins to happen straight away as they're walking. They get to the first hole. There's other players already in the course, and Stanley's walking along, and I actually missed it at the start and realised what was happening, because it kind of happens in the background, you know, like Oliver's with the 2 girls and they're kind of talking and having a bit of fun, but in the background you can see Stanley walking along, and he sees a golf ball, he bends down, picks it up and puts it in his pocket. This happens a couple of times, and behind all that there you see all these other golfers, and the heck's my ball, that sort of thing. So they get to start their game anyway, and Stanley's actually wearing a hat that belongs to Oliver in this here, so he's getting ready, get down to take a shot. Every time he looks down at the ball, the hat falls over his face. This keeps happening and happening, and then some guy with a wig actually turns up and kicks him out of the road to take his shot. So this guy, he ends up coming back once or twice in the film. At one point he loses the wig as, I think it's Stanley's taking a shot. Instead of Stanley hitting the ball, he ends up sending the wig across the green. Then there's another shot afterwards where he misses the ball completely and he takes a big chunk of turf out of the top of the green, and that goes flying as well. So this guy with the wig, when he goes to retrieve his wig, he gets sidetracked with something else completely. He ends up putting the water dirt on top of his head, these two little daisies sticking up. So you don't really see much more of him, but he turns up once in a while. He gets a wee push or a nudge sort of a thing. We end up at the end of the film. In classic Laurel and Hardy style, there's not usually a fight sequence, but usually if a fight breaks out, it's a big one, and there's a whole argument kicks off over the rules of the game and what they're supposed to be doing. And it's a part of the green has been flooded, and there's of course there's water, grass in the water area, but then there's like a muddy bog area involved here as well. And I guess the guy, the wig, actually his ball has rolled into the water, and he takes the ball out of the water and sets it on the grass to take a shot. Stanley stops and pulls out the rules out of the back pocket and is like, blah blah blah, a silent comedy, you don't hear any of this going on. So it's all acted out and signed out and whatever, perfectly done. You don't lose your way in any shape or form. Listen, tractor. I don't know if this mic would pick that up, but a lot of noise outside of here. This kicks off a fight anyway, where the guy wheels his golf club down under the water to splash. Stanley accidentally splashes one of the women, then she splashes him back, and then this kicks off, and there's 20 people end up getting involved in this here. The guy with the wig disappears completely, and of course then Stanley that started the fight, he's standing, there's nothing happening to him, like he's bone dry, and Oliver comes across and it gives him a nudge and he falls into the water, and Stanley gets up and gives him a nudge, and then he gets splashed in the water, and then at this point everybody is involved in this fight. Then Ollie starts, he's not going to take any of your abuse, Stanley, and he gives him this massive nudge. Stanley bounces back across the water, still on his feet, he gets knocked off his balance, goes back across the water. Ollie comes down to go after him again, and just, of course, typical Laurel and Hardy slapstick fashion, where Stanley walked across backwards, losing his balance. Ollie goes to walk across the same part and ends up falling into a massive hole, disappearing completely under the water. And yes, then of course he gets Stanley pulled down on there. They're fighting about for a bit, and the next thing, the guy with the wig pops up out of the water. However the heck he got down there, no one knows. But that's the beautiful thing about a Laurel and Hardy film. It's the randomness of what happens in these films is just beautiful, and the last thing normally that you expect to happen will happen. It is indeed the crazy world of Laurel and Hardy. Now, in these videos I normally give a rock and roll rating for the film. So for Should Married Men Go Home, I am going to give this a rock and roll rating of good. I'm only going to go as far as a good in this one. It's a very, very enjoyable film, but I think of this one, I may be wrong, I don't know if they actually, a lot of their movies, feature-length films, are remade shorts that they did earlier in their career. Now, as a lifelong Laurel and Hardy fan, no problem in saying that I have never seen the entire collection of Laurel and Hardy. I've seen the majority of it, but I'm sure there's quite a few things in this short, for example, is one of them that I didn't see until this review. I don't know if this was actually ever brought back and remade in a feature-length version in any of the other films. But you know, if it has, I'm looking forward to seeing it. But you know, as I say, I think this had been done later and on sound and had a little bit more action and a little bit more dialogue, I think it would have been better. But you know, it is a good film, definitely not a waste of your time whatsoever.